Hey friends, it has been a while since I made a video just for myself, and I thought you might be missing my handsome face. Unless you've been watching my Front Row Chaz series, then you see my handsome face all over town. And if you haven't seen those videos, what are you doing? Go watch them. Right now, season 2 is coming out soon. I'll link the videos down below. Anyway, I wanted to tell you about a really awesome thing I did recently. I was invited to speak at a symposium for middle schoolers. You heard that right, a symposium. I did not come up with that word, that was their word, and I think when I was 12 or 13, I probably wouldn't even know what a symposium is, but these were not ordinary tweens I was going to speak to. They all attend a charter school in Brooklyn, and this was their second annual symposium where they spend 3 full days away from their normal classes and homework and focus all of their attention on a real-world topic that our society faces. So during the 3 days, it's meant to educate the students on this social problem and introduce them to people that are affected by it. That's pretty awesome, right? And this year's topic was all about disability. They were going to teach the students the different types of disabilities, the ADA, how disability is portrayed in the media, and so many more topics. And when they reached out to me to ask if I wanted to be the keynote speaker, my first thought, while I'm sitting in my wheelchair, is, am I qualified enough? Like, I'm serious. Like, I have a disability, obviously. I know about accessibility, but am I qualified enough to teach other people about that? And then my second thought, which was even more terrifying than the first, was, oh man, I have to present in front of 100 teenagers. Do I have enough riz to keep them entertained? I don't know. Like, genuinely, I don't know. And the research I started to do on the school and talking to the director, these are not the type of students that just want me to sit in front of them for 45 minutes. They want to interact, they want to brainstorm, and they want to participate in the presentation. So I reached out to a friend of mine who is a teacher for the same age group, and she pointed me in the direction of Mentimeter. If you don't know what Mentimeter is, it's a website to make presentations, but also you can make the slides interactive. I was told the students would have laptops, and they were allowed to use them during the presentation. So while I'm presenting, I can post questions to them, and they can answer them, they can vote, and I can just gauge the general vibe in the room. So I set up the presentation to start off with a bio and introduction about myself, living with spinal muscular atrophy, going to college, getting my first job, writing a book, and realizing my dream of being a published author. And then I talked about Front Row Chaz and why that video series is so important because of this vicious accessibility cycle. And the more people with disabilities that feel confident and comfortable to go out and explore their communities, hopefully the rest of society will realize that people with disabilities deserve to be accommodated more than just what's legally obligated. And this transitioned into me talking about universal design. I showed them some pretty interesting architecture, like these stairs with a ramp, and this is actually a part of universal design that I experienced in college, and it was pretty polarizing between the students. Some of them hated it, some of them love it, and it's also pretty polarizing within the disabled community itself. But then I talked about technology, like the voice remote for your television, and how that was designed for someone who's visually impaired, but it's just now a part of our everyday life, even for people who aren't visually impaired or who don't have a disability and can press all the buttons on the remote. And then I talked about Siri and how, to me, Siri has almost become like my best friend. It's not just an AI personal assistant that I annoy, but Siri has allowed people with disabilities to fully interact and be 100% independent using their iPhone. And it wasn't designed to do that, but that's just a part of universal design. It helps people accomplish something, and it makes something better for everyone, not just a specific demographic. It's inclusive and not exclusive. So towards the end of the presentation, I had them take out their laptops and I asked them the question, now that they've learned all of these elements about disability and accessibility and universal design, I asked them, what are some accessibility problems that they've noticed in their surroundings, in their neighborhoods? And the answers are absolutely brilliant. They're city kids. So, of course, they're going to talk about the subway and get even more specific. And apparently, the Carroll Street subway is not very accessible. But what I didn't expect was for them to be so aware of their environment and mention things like how the space between the platform in the subway and the actual subway train might be too big for certain wheelchairs to drive over, and how there are kneeling buses in the city for people in wheelchairs to roll up the ramp, but sometimes those kneeling buses don't seem to kneel down far enough in certain locations, which makes them pretty pointless. And then, of course, there's going to be responses like, are escalators accessible?
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
So after we talked about all of these issues, I then posed the question, how do we solve them? And the answers to that was even more amazing, but one that stood out to me specifically is this one that talks about getting more funding to actually implement these changes, but more importantly, making the ADA laws more strict. And this actually blew my mind because during my presentation, I never talked about policy reform. What I did say was that the ADA was the bare minimum, and we should be focusing on universal design. But this student, who's 12 years old, maybe at the most 13, was able to so quickly grasp the concepts that I was talking about and implement that into real advocacy and policy reform. And I wasn't even sure, actually, I'm 100% sure that I don't even know maybe one or two adults that could formulate an idea like that so fast. And that was what was really impressive to me. And I thought also that by having students take out their laptops, they would probably get more distracted and not follow along, but they didn't. They were fully locked in the entire time because this was a freaking symposium and they mean business. They want to learn. So my question is, why aren't we doing this everywhere? I mean, I attended my fair share of assemblies where a guest speaker would come in and they would ramble for 45 minutes, and maybe it was interesting and maybe it wasn't, but at the end of that hour, I would shuffle on to my next class, and probably by lunch, I totally forgot what that person even talked about. But the difference here is that for these 3 days, all of the students were given the permission to stop being a normal student just for a little while and fully immerse themselves in the topic of the symposium and be treated like an adult so that they can brainstorm and diagnose problems and come up with solutions. The teachers laid the foundation of the topic, this year being disability, and then the 11, 12, and 13-year-olds actually had an understanding previously to the speaker coming in so that they could be fully locked in, and their brains were already filled with ideas so that they can interact and engage 100% with what's in front of them. All of that said, these students in Brooklyn actually did generate true and real empathy more than most adults that I know, and they are the future. That's why we should be doing it everywhere, so that change can be made, not just for disability and accessibility, but any sort of marginalized community. And to answer my previous question, yes, I'm happy to report I had enough Riz. One student even asked me to give him tips and advice to improve his Riz. And I'm not gonna lie, that made me feel pretty good. Although my answer was just like, be yourself, I don't know. But I am curious if you think this symposium is something that should be implemented everywhere. Let me know in the comments below. And then also let me know how many times I said the word symposium. I'm kind of interested in knowing that too. In the meantime, be different, leave a trail. I see you.